They broke my marriage. God rebuilt me. This is the update no one expected. I never thought I'd be writing something like this, but I don't really know where else to put it. 3 years ago, my husband of 11 years told me he needed space. 2 weeks later, I found out that space had a name, a desk across the hall from his office, and a pregnancy test she posted on Facebook before he told me anything. Yes, his secretary. When he left, he didn't just walk out on our marriage. It felt like he walked out on me, on the life we built, the prayers we prayed together, the future I thought God had promised. I remember sitting on the floor of our bedroom, staring at the indent in the carpet where his dresser used to be, and whispering, "God, why didn't you stop this?" After that, my faith unraveled quietly. I still went to church, but I sat in the back and left early. Worship songs about God's faithfulness felt like salt in an open wound. People would say, "God has a plan," and all I could think was, then why does it hurt this much? The depression crept in slowly. Some days, getting out of bed felt like climbing a mountain. I stopped praying, not out of rebellion, but exhaustion. Every prayer felt like it hit the ceiling and fell back down on me. The worst part wasn't the betrayal. It was the silence, the loneliness, the feeling that God had abandoned me just like my husband did. One night, after a particularly heavy day, I found my old Bible shoved in the back of a drawer. I almost put it back, but it opened on its own to Psalm 34:18. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. I didn't feel saved. I didn't feel close to God. But for the first time in months, I cried to Him instead of about Him. That verse didn't magically fix my life. My husband still finalized the divorce. He still married her. I still had to rebuild my finances, my identity, and my confidence piece by piece. But something shifted. I started praying again. Not pretty prayers, honest ones, angry ones. Sometimes just, "God, I can't do today without you." I found a small women's Bible study where no one rushed me to move on. They listened, they prayed, they reminded me that God is not ashamed of our brokenness. Over time, I realized something painful but freeing. God didn't leave me. People did. My husband made a choice, a sinful one. God didn't endorse it, but He also didn't waste my pain. In the ashes of my marriage, God started rebuilding me, not as someone's wife, but as His daughter. I still have hard days. I still wrestle with forgiveness. But I'm learning that faith isn't about never breaking. It's about who you run to when you do. Update. Boite. First, thank you to everyone who commented and messaged me after my original post. I read more than I replied, but your prayers truly mattered more than you know. A lot has happened since then. About a year after my divorce was finalized, I heard through mutual friends that my ex-husband's perfect new life wasn't so perfect. The woman he left me for, the same secretary he swore was just a coworker, quit her job shortly after they married. At the time, he framed it as them wanting a simpler life. What I didn't know was that his company had quietly started an internal investigation into their relationship because it violated company policy. Long story short, he lost his job. With one income gone and a baby on the way, the pressure cracked the image they'd worked so hard to maintain. Friends who once applauded their brave love story stopped calling. The same people who ignored me during my divorce suddenly wanted to talk, mostly to ask if the rumors were true. Then came the part that hit me the hardest. My ex reached out, not to apologize, not really. He told me he was overwhelmed, that life hadn't turned out how he expected, and that he missed the stability we had. For a moment, old wounds flared up. But this time, I didn't feel desperate. I felt clear. I told him I forgave him, not because he deserved it, but because I deserved peace. I also told him reconciliation wasn't an option. That door had closed, and God had carried me through it, not back toward it. Meanwhile, my life looked nothing like I imagined back when I was sobbing on my bedroom floor. I started therapy, I rejoined my church, not as someone hiding in the back pews, but as someone willing to be honest. I began volunteering with a women's ministry that supports those going through divorce and depression. Somehow, my deepest pain became the place where God now uses me most. Financially, things stabilized. Emotionally, I'm stronger than I've ever been. Spiritually, my faith is quieter, but deeper. I no longer believe God exists to prevent suffering. I believe He exists to walk us through it. God's justice doesn't always look like instant consequences. Sometimes it's simply allowing people to live with the fruit of their own choices. Story 2. Gossip almost ruined my life. And God used the wreckage to teach me the truth. I never imagined how much damage a few whispered words could cause. I, 32 female, was a faithful member of my church, volunteering in the nursery, helping organize women's Bible studies, and always attending Sunday services early. I loved my community and felt like I was living out my faith through service. Then the gossip started. It was subtle at first. A woman I considered a friend asked me if everything was okay at home. I was confused, but I brushed it off. Over the next few weeks, though, the air around me changed. Conversations stopped when I walked into rooms, friends began avoiding me, and I could feel eyes judging me, even in church. Eventually, the rumor reached its full form. I was accused of having an affair with a married man in our congregation. None of it was true, not even close. But once the seed of suspicion was planted, it spread like wildfire. What started as a misinterpreted encounter became a story that people repeated as fact. The effects on my life were devastating. My church stopped allowing me to volunteer until things settled. Friends stopped texting or returning calls. And then the worst part. My workplace got wind of the rumor. My boss, who had always valued me, began questioning my character and judgment. Within a month, I was called in for a meeting and told that the negative attention from the community made my position untenable. I lost my job, the one I had loved and relied on, all because of lies that weren't true. I was crushed. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and completely alone. I stopped attending church because every door felt like a courtroom where I had already been convicted. I questioned everything: my faith, my friends, my purpose. One night, curled up on the floor of my apartment, I opened my Bible to Proverbs 16:28. A perverse person stirs up conflict, and a gossip separates close friends. I cried, realizing how true it was. God was reminding me that He saw the full truth, even when everyone else had twisted it. That night, I prayed like never before, not just for justice, but for strength to endure, for forgiveness for those who hurt me, and for guidance on how to move forward. Months passed. Slowly, the truth came out. The woman who started the rumor admitted she had misunderstood a situation and filled in the blanks with her assumptions. Apologies trickled in from some people. Some relationships were mended, others were permanently broken. The damage to my job and my reputation couldn't be fully undone, but God began to bring restoration in ways I hadn't expected. I found a new job, one that challenged me more but also allowed me to grow spiritually and professionally. I returned to church, initially sitting in the back pew, praying for courage to face the community again. I began volunteering in smaller ways, more discerning about who I confided in. Most importantly, God taught me about forgiveness. I learned that forgiveness doesn't excuse sin or falsehood. It releases bitterness from my heart so I can heal. Update: facing the truth, receiving justice, and finding peace. It's been about a year since the gossip nearly destroyed my life, and things have finally started to settle, but not without some hard lessons along the way. The woman who started the rumor finally faced some consequences. A few members of our church leadership confronted her privately after confirming the truth. She came to me, tearful and shaking, begging for forgiveness. Her apology was heartfelt, but I didn't accept it right away. I needed her to understand the magnitude of what she had done. So I told her. I told her everything. I described how whispers followed me wherever I went, how people looked at me like I was guilty even when I wasn't, and how the church, my safe space, felt like a courtroom where I had already been judged. I explained how friends stopped returning my calls, how I cried alone at night, and how the rumor cost me my job. I told her about the humiliation of being called in by my boss, how my reputation was questioned, and how I had felt my entire world crumble around me. She listened. She cried. She said she had no idea her little misunderstanding would spiral out of control, but I could tell she finally understood. I told her that forgiveness is possible, but trust must be rebuilt over time, and that words have the power to destroy lives. Meanwhile, my former employer reached out. They acknowledged the harm caused by the spread of false information tied to my church community. They offered a settlement check to compensate for lost wages and damages to my reputation. Receiving it brought a sense of closure I hadn't realized I needed. It wasn't about the money, it was about recognition that what happened to me was wrong. With that chapter closing, I made a conscious choice about my spiritual life. I decided it was time to find another church, a community where I could worship, serve, and grow, without the shadow of past rumors hanging over me. I still love God with all my heart, but I realized that my faith doesn't depend on a single community. It depends on Him. Looking back, the gossip tried to destroy me, but God used it to teach me resilience, patience, forgiveness, and discernment. I've learned to guard my heart, choose my confidants wisely, and lean fully on God's truth instead of human opinions.